People first organizations will win in the future of work.
Your only real asset is your people.
We all want purpose-driven work.
HR-led organization is the
I'm
future.
sorry, but leaders don't lead empty desks and empty shop floors.
Welcome to the People Strategy Leaders Show. I'm your host, Sri Chellappa, founder and president of Engagedly, and a serial entrepreneur in technology, films, and music. This is where we talk to people leaders, business strategists, and organizational savants about leading in the time of change. What is working, what is not working, and more importantly, what we should be thinking about. Stick around to the end of the show. We will reveal how you can be our next guest. And now, let's engage. Hello, this is Sri Chellappa again with People Strategy Leaders Podcast. And today I'm joined with Rod McDermott, who's the CEO and co-founder of Activate 180, which helps companies elevate employee performance, productivity, and happiness through affordable coaching for all. The CEO and co-founder of McDermott and Bull, one of the fastest growing executive search firms in North America with offices domestically and internationally. And he's also the president and CEO of M&B Interim Leaders, which he founded along with Angela Anderson in 2011 to address an increased client need for time-sensitive solutions to important leadership challenges. He's also the founder of M&B Executive Network, the community of in-transition senior-level executives seeking guidance to land their next role, serving over 10,000 members since inception. So obviously you've been around a lot of executives. So Rod, I'm excited to speak about that on the show.
Thanks, Sri. Hey, I'm excited to be here. You know, when you go through my bio, it sounds like I'm way too busy. I need to scale back.
Busy is good these days, right?
Yeah,
in a way.
I'll take busy.
Yeah, busy is better than not being busy. But so Rod, obviously there's a lot of changes that have happened in the last 2-3 years, and everybody's been talking about the changes in the workplace, the behaviors, the balance of power between employees and organizations, and the agility in which people have to move now in the organization as well. What are you seeing is the future of work when you talk to these executives that you're working with?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. And I see it from a couple different perspectives, right? So, you know, as you mentioned, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Activate 180, which is a corporate coaching program that, you know, executive coaching has been around a long time, right, Sri? I've had an executive coach for 21 years. It's kind of changed my life and helped me out. But we created a model where we can coach at all levels of the company at an affordable price point, so that companies don't have to say, hey, who are my high potentials? Let's put them in there. Let's do just coaching for the leaders or the executives. No, let's ignite the rocket fuel of a company and let's get everybody leveling up. And so that's what our coaching business does. But I have a different perspective as well, being CEO of a top 25 North American retained executive search firm, because we're trying to attract talent to our clients, right? And so I see what works and I see what doesn't work, and I see kind of the levers that companies need to either pull or start pulling if they want to go not only attract, but retain the very best talent, right? And, you know, one of the things I'm seeing is, COVID kind of did something to people's kind of psyche about work and what it represents in their life, right? There's this concept that we call at Activate 180, we've heard of work-life balance forever, right? We have a concept we call work-life harmony, right? It's different. Work-life balance kind of implies a compromise, right? Mm-hmm. Work-life harmony says, my whole life is in harmony, and there's no way I can divide myself into, you know, professional Rod and personal Rod. I'm one person. So how do I do all that in harmony? And that's what people are looking for. And they're looking for work that doesn't feel like work. They're looking for something that gets them up, gets them excited. And it's not just the work they're doing, but it's the people they're doing it with. And it's the value they feel from the company, you know? And it's funny, I talked to some CEOs that I know that have been around a long time, and, you know, they're frustrated by this being an employee market, employees getting to dictate how much I'm making, you know, and getting offered a lot of money or where I want to work. And they're saying, hey, I want things to get back to normal. Some people are looking at this upcoming recession that we're probably going to have and say, well, it'll shift the balance of power back to the employers. But in my sense, the reality is the best companies are going to be the ones that take into account the fact that you're spending most of your waking hours with me. I have an obligation back to you, and it's more than just money. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I see the future of work going.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. I actually say the same thing. You spend your best hours of your day at work,
Yeah.
working with the people that you love or hate or whatever it is. It's just a workplace, right? And you're spending the least energy hours at home with your family. So it's kind of unfortunate in some ways. So why not make at least those best hours, fulfilling for the employee who's at the workplace? And that was the whole premise of, Engagedly, that we started the product company to make a workplace more fulfilling and enjoyable for all, because it can be just about money, because we have a limited amount of time and energy on this planet Earth. We might as well try to make the best out of it. So it's almost like a human condition problem that we want to solve. If we
Yeah.
want to be better humans and have better life experiences in general, and it can just be about money at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think through COVID, people started really weighing mortality and saying, how do I want to spend my time? How do I want to spend my life? If I've got X number of years left, what do I want that made up of, right? And do I want to go to a place where I'm just not happy? And I mean, you've read the same stuff that we've read, statistics saying at any given time, as many as 85% of people at a company could be disengaged,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're just not engaged in either the work they're doing, who they're doing it with, who they're doing it for, any of that. And it's like, we've got to fix that. And here's the opportunity, right? I don't look at it as a problem. I look at it as an opportunity. If we can shift that 85% and 15% engagement and now make it 85% engaged, now we're really talking about something. That's what Google does. That's what Apple did. That's what these great companies that took off like rockets were able to do, is create that level of engagement and openness with their people and giving them, lives. And it's funny, 20 years ago, we'd make fun of, the companies, they had the ping pong tables and they have these other things. But the reality is you give people a chance to unwind for 30 minutes. You give people a chance to hit that reset button. They come back renewed, and then they get fired up, and then they go and they do amazing things. And so I think we're seeing a dynamic shift in work where people feel like, yeah, I'm not only getting a paycheck, but I'm also really aligned with where we're going with this company. And I go in fired up every day and having fun, and I come home fired up, and I'm actually a better human being with my family. I'll tell you one other thing, like what you mentioned, we spend most of our best hours at work, and then we come home and we spend our tired hours with our family. But happier people at work come home and they're happier at home as well. We've all had those partners, like, my wife and other people's spouses have said, why are you still doing that? If it doesn't give you pleasure, why are you doing that? Because they see that you come home unhappy, unfulfilled, and they want to change that because they want a different you too.
Yeah. And I've actually read some statistics somewhere, I can't remember where it was, where people who have a bad or toxic work environment actually have bad family life too.
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact data where there was. I was doing a research. I was reading a research paper on that actually. So there was actually a direct correlation between the two. So it's actually bigger than just the workplace. You're affecting that person's life at home and their family too.
Well, and let's take it a step further, right? I look at what we do. This is one of the things we talk about at Activate 180, and this sounds heady, and I apologize for that, but it's what drives us, right? It's our mission. Is I think we're making generational impact, right? Because you come home and it's not just you and your spouse, it's also your kids, and your
Right.
kids in the sense that, oh, well, this is what work life is about, right? I'm going to go to work, I'm going to toil. My son has a joke. He goes, I'm going to the salt mines, and it's like, and he's got a professional job, right? And but it doesn't have to be that way. And if you teach your kids that it is, now you've got the next generation is like, hey, you don't have to love what you do. Just go in and do it, make your paycheck, enjoy your vacations, and put some money away. And I see a lot of people live for vacations and retirement. Well, that's such a small percentage, especially while you're working, of your year. How about you can enjoy the other stuff, right? And that's what I think we have to teach our kids. We're role models for our kids.
Right. And there was the concept of retirement 200 years ago. You worked and that was your life. You had life and work. It was all one thing,
Yeah.
if you were a blacksmith, you were a blacksmith till you couldn't blacksmith anymore,
Yeah.
Or if you were a farmer, you did that till you didn't like, oh, I'm 65, I'm no longer farming, my kids are going to farm. It wasn't like that at all, right?
Right.
Or if you're a general or whatever it was, kings or whatever the different roles you might have in the hierarchy, there was a concept. This is a fairly new concept, actually, if you think about it. Maybe just in the last 150 years since the Industrial Revolution, for the most part. But that being said, I think one of the things that when you think about the fact that people have gone remote, there's all this flux in the market. Employees are feeling, okay, looks like 6 months ago I had all the power, and now suddenly there's a downdrift, and I might lose my job. So there's this fear. What as a leader can you do to make sure that you have a very highly engaged and motivated workforce?
Yeah, so I try to start with, kind of the mission first, right? What is our mission here? And can I get people engaged in that? And if I can get people engaged in that mission, and then we can say, okay, sometimes the rules change, right? What we were doing over the last 6 and 12 months that worked, those rules might change for the next 12 months. And so it might no longer work. It's, I showed, you've seen that video, Who Moved My Cheese? I don't know if you read the book or seen the video. It's like a 12-minute YouTube video. And I've shown it a bunch. And I said, hey guys, cheese station C might come up empty. And so if it does, we have to be ready to pivot. And the beauty is we are flexible people. We know how to pivot. We know how to do this. And so let's get engaged in solving the problem. And generally in a recession, in a downturn, the problem is usually revenue, right? I've got to go out and create revenue opportunities. So let's go out and figure out how we can do that. It might be we've got to create new products. It might be we have to repackage our product differently or our service offering differently. Price is one way to do it. It's not the way I like to do it, but let's go out and figure out how we can create new customer opportunities, serve our customers better. I like to say what was our A game is now our C game. And we need a new A game, right? And so if you can engage your employees in that, starting with the mission of who is it we are, who is it we want to be and continue to be, and then how can we all work together? What are the steps that we can take to work together to solve this challenge? And I tell everybody in my companies, revenue is not just a salesperson's problem, it's everybody's problem. Because if we don't have it, and you look, Facebook, Meta just announced they're going to lay off 11,000 people. Why? It's a challenging economic environment. What does that mean? It means they're having revenue challenges, and they're not making the money that they used to make. And so they've got to figure out a way to cut costs. Most people don't want to get laid off. They want to keep their jobs. And if they want to do that, they have to figure out how they can be part of the solution. And if the solution is creating more opportunities to drive revenue, get involved. I love people who walk in my office and say, hey, we're a little less busy in this one practice, but this other practice over here is cranky. I want to go help those guys out. Or what can I do to help my practice get busier? So to your point, I think the engagement has to be there to be able to figure out how companies can, I have a partner who runs our Canadian operation. When we talk about the 2009 Great Recession, which was devastating for the executive search industry for about a year and a half. And I said, how'd you do during that time? He says, I chose not to participate. And I said, what do you mean? He said, here's the 3 things I did differently than before the recession that helped drive revenue. And at the end of the day, I just out-hustled it. And I got my team together and we out-hustled it. And that's what we did. So what is it we need to do to solve the problem? Get everybody roped in and engaged in that. And go do it and work your plan. And there's going to be some days that you'll lose, but if you did everything you could to work your plan, go home happy that night, and if you do those things day in and day out, you'll feel good about what you're trying to do to affect your outcome. I think the depression that comes from a bad economy is the uncertainty about what's around the corner for me. You've heard this term before, right? It's a recession when your neighbor gets laid off. It's a depression when you get laid off. But oftentimes, even though you haven't lost your job, but somebody else has lost their job, you're depressed.
Right.
This is an opportunity for companies too, by the way, in my opinion. I think even if you have to make those cutbacks, what do you do? What does Meta do for the, let's see, what do they have? Like 87,000 employees, something like
90,
that?
I think it's 94. And I was wondering, why do they have 94,000 to begin with? But that's a different topic to discuss, but go ahead.
Yeah, but if they have, so 94, and then after they make these cuts, they'll have 83,000, right? What do you do with the 83 that now have to do the work that 94 were doing? And how do you keep them engaged and not scared? Because let's face it, when we play scared, when we play with fear, we're not going to play our best game. You know, I always say like a quarterback out on the football field who's afraid of throwing an interception is not going to win the game because they're not going to take risks. You've got to take risks. So don't be fearful, be courageous. And it's our job as leaders to get our folks the tools they need to go in there and be courageous and say, okay, this happened. It's done. It happened. But here's what we're going to do moving forward. And here's how we can affect our outcome. And I think that's what the leaders need to do.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned something interesting, right? You can make a choice not to participate in the economic downturn. And obviously, as a coaching firm and executive search firm, what are the things specifically that organizations can do related to what you practice?
Yeah. So, you know, from our perspective, and I'll share this with you too, we start seeing a little bit of slowdown in some of our practice areas, right? We have a partner who runs a real estate practice that actually has had a pretty good year, but over the last 3-4 months has started to kind of slow down a little bit because a lot of it is focused on commercial opportunities, private equity funds that are buying real estate. And they're kind of sitting on the sidelines now saying, well, things are going to shake out. So let's let them shake out a bit. And so that's going to slow down. So what we're doing is we're taking a look at this person's practice and doing a deep dive and saying, okay, where can you position? Are there any areas in your sector that have strength? You know, for instance, banks are going to have to start taking some of these properties back, but they're going to need real estate professionals to oversee them, to manage them, to move them off the books. You know, in the banking world, we call that special assets, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's usually called SAD, Special Assets Department, because it is sad. You've taken over this, you know, you've foreclosed on stuff, but they need to hire professionals. And banks haven't done this since the Great Recession. So those SAD departments don't really exist. Nothing's ever come back. Everything's, you know, been up and to the right, but now it's going to change. And so they're going to have to staff up. So her expertise, our partner's expertise in real estate for management, for restructuring, for balance sheet, finance strengths, things like that, is going to move possibly over to the finance world. And so she can shift over there. So what we're trying to do is do a strategic deep dive and say, okay, let's go to where the money is and where the opportunity is. Because it might not be here anymore, at least for a while, but it might be over here. And let's face it, real estate went in the toilet starting in 2007 and didn't come out until 2012.
Right.
But it did come out. And it was really big for that next 9 years. So it might go in the toilet for a while and it'll come back. You know, my line is this too shall pass. Whatever it is, it shall pass. But if you sit there and you continue to go to cheese station C, expecting there to be cheese, you're going to be disappointed. So step one, in my opinion, Sri, is you got to have a plan. And you got to look back and say, okay, how can I reposition myself, my expertise, my business to serve clients that need me? And that's the first step, because if you're not looking at that, you're letting your business be run by the macroeconomic characteristics or, you know, things happening out in the market. You're not running it. We need to run it, right?
Yeah.
So I like to say, you know, we're driving down a road, but it's not really paved, and it's not, you know, imagine we're out there in the wilderness and we're driving through and there's no trail, there's no road, but we know the direction we want to go. We've got to kind of make it up as we go. And hopefully we don't go into a ditch. We don't go off a cliff. We don't run into a mountain, you know, so we've got to navigate a little bit. Right. Yeah. And if we use our brains and say, okay, where's the opportunity? Where's the money? That's our navigation. And we'll get past this and we'll move forward. So not every firm, I mean, I look back to, you know, Airbnb was founded in the last recession. Uber was founded in the last recession. I mean, some great companies get founded during those times, and the people that serve those companies, they do well too.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about these layoffs that are happening. At least some of the high profile ones have, you know, surfaced, especially in the tech sector. What does a leader do for the people who are left behind to make sure that, you know, their productivity and motivation levels don't go into the toilet?
Yeah, I think it's a really big opportunity for companies that oftentimes is missed, right? You know, you've got we just mentioned at Meta, they're going to have 83,000 people doing the work that 94,000 people were doing, right? So now all of a sudden, the work doesn't go away. They still have to get that stuff done, right? But you just have fewer people doing it. And so what can we do to motivate those folks? First of all, we've got to take fear out of the equation. We've got to let them know, hey, we've got a control. We've got a handle on our income statement, our balance sheet, our cash is good. We're in a good place now. Okay. So we had to right size, but now we've done it. And now we need everybody moving forward to control our destiny at this point. And so one of the things, and this is one of the things we talk about with Activate 180 coaching, you know, I'll talk to companies from time to time, and because of the uncertainty and the fear, if their company's being impacted, if it's not just up and to the right, they might be saying, hey, we're just kind of holding off right now. We're not going to spend anything. I'm like, well, wouldn't you spend money on something that drove value, that drove productivity and performance improvement, and wasn't all that expensive, but you could see a measurable impact in bottom line performance of each and every individual employee? Why not do something like that? And so we're actually trying to say, this is a productivity enhancement. This is a performance improver, right? And it's got an ROI attached to it. We've created an ROI calculator that says, if you do these things for your people, here's what comes out of it, right? So we're trying to work with companies that are courageous. They might have needed to make cuts, but then with the rest of their folks, they're saying, okay, we're still going to move forward. Our 5-year plan is still intact. Our 1-year plan changed. You know, we needed to make some changes because the 1-year macroeconomic environment is such that we need to do it. But here's what we're trying to do to make sure that you guys are all well equipped to handle this. And I think employee happiness is as important as ever, because what you're going to do is you're going to have people walking in feeling really bad about the person that sat next to them that's no longer there anymore, seeing empty spaces, you know, and saying, okay, when's the next shoe going to drop? When's the hammer going to drop on me? Right? We got to get past that. So as leaders, it's like address it, stay in front of it, do it regularly. The other thing I was going to say, Shri, is transparency. Really, really huge. People are a lot more resilient than I think a lot of leaders give them credit for. I talk to people a lot and I say, do you share your bottom line numbers? I know you share your top line. Do you share and these are private companies. Do you share your bottom line numbers with your employees? Most private companies don't do it for 2 reasons. Number one, they don't want their employees to know they're making as much money as they are. And number 2, they don't want their employees to know they're doing as badly as they are, like the opposite end of the spectrum, because they don't think that they can handle it. Well, I've seen the exact opposite. In both cases, people generally think when you're doing well, you're doing way better than you are. Okay. So when you tell them how you're doing, they're like, oh, okay, you're making 10% pre-tax and, you know, 10 cents on the dollar. That's it. You're not, you know, getting hugely rich. You know, you're not doing it on me, and you treat me well. So I'm okay with that. And the second side is, hey guys, we have a challenge. We're not making money. We're losing money. Now, let me tell you about our balance sheet and how that can support losses and what our runway is like. As long as we have a runway, we're okay. But let's get the plane off the ground before the runway ends. We've got to get this plane off the ground. And here's what I need each of you to do. So I think transparency is massive in these times. And it's something that's kind of overlooked.
Yeah, I think transparency is extremely key, you know, and one of the things I've been through layoffs before in my previous, when I was an employee. Fortunately, I did not get laid off, but there was a lot of palpable fear, you know, even with me, because I was actually a foreign visa holder. And, you know, when you lose a job, you have 60 days to find another job and a sponsor. Otherwise, you have to go back to your home country, which in my case was India. And it was a lot of fear, right? I mean, I had done all this effort and work to get here and, you know, gone to school and did all the right things, if you will. And fortunately, you know, I didn't have to get laid off, but the fear was real. And I think one of the things my employer did well was that after they laid off these X number of people, they said, this is it. We are done. We are not doing any more layoffs. And they didn't do it for at least 6 months. They didn't do it. And the economy went further down south and they had to do some more. But at least they tried really hard to stick to their, you know, the word that they gave to the employees. And I think that's important because uncertainty causes actually more pain than even a bad certainty is.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And, you know, one thing I'll share with you that I share with employees, right, who are facing this. So, you know, we have this executive network for senior executives in transition, as you read in the beginning. we've served over 10,000 senior executives. I mean, CEOs of big companies, like multi-billion-dollar companies, have been through our executive network, all the way to, it's kind of VP and above, right? So I'll have people call me and say, hey, I'm not sure if I'm going to get the hammer dropped on me, but it just got dropped on 10% of our employee base. And so now I'm concerned. And then they might even say things like, hey, you hear from companies what they're looking for in terms of transformational leaders. What are the things I need to be focused on? And this is one of the things I tell people: you are the president of your career. Your boss isn't, your company isn't, you are the president. Imagine that your career is your own company. Now, what are you going to do to make what you sell indispensable to who's buying it, right? And what are you going to do to try and help them solve their problems? And so the term I use, indispensable, is what you have to become as an employee. And which employees are generally indispensable? The ones that drive value in hard times or good times, but they have to drive value. And if you're waiting, like, okay, tell me what to do, give me orders, I need to know, and I'll help you. Well, that's one kind of employee. If you're an employee who says, hey, I know how we can fix this. I have some ideas. I've got a plan A and a plan B and a plan C, but here's what I want to do. And I want to affect our top line. I'm telling you what, as a leader, I'm not laying that person off.
Yes.
I'm going to let them run with it because they're trying to help me solve the problem. I mean, let's face it, you're a leader, I'm a leader. I've run a number of companies. Luckily, I have a leadership team. They come to me and they're like, here's what we propose to solve the problems. I love that because it's lonely at the top when you're the only one trying to figure out how are we going to pay our bills 9 months from now? Right. What are the things that because we have a runway, but it's not, no runway is, I don't care who you are, no runway is unlimited, right? You can lose your way into bankruptcy. We've seen this from great companies in the past that are no longer great companies. So we have to have people on board that are going to make themselves indispensable by helping us solve the problem. So I always tell people, figure out what the biggest problem is in your company. Generally in a hard time, it's revenue. Figure out how you can help solve that and make yourself indispensable. I'll tell you one other quick thing. I was involved in layoffs as well. I was a banker when I started my career, and one bank I worked at now got bought by Bank of America. We had 3 layoffs in 2 years. I never got laid off. And I remember talking to my boss, and I was 23, 24 years old at the time. I said, why are these people who've been around forever getting laid off? And he said to me, they don't know how to drive revenue. And revenue is hard to come by. We're in a downturn right now. You pick up the phone, you call CFOs you've never talked to before, and you go out and you sell loans and you drive revenue. And that's what we need. And as long as you keep doing that, you will always be safe because we never lay off the people that are bringing in business. The people that are waiting for the phone to ring. And I heard that, the biggest search firm in the world was trying to recruit Chris Bull and I before we started our company. And when we decided to start McDermott Bull, 6 months into it, we had the tech recession. And this firm, they were on the front page of the business section in our newspaper, and it said laid off 300 people that day. And at 10 in the morning, I get a call from the gal who tried to recruit me. And she's like, hey, I'm giving you my quarterly call. I still want you on the team. And I go, hey, don't you read your own press? You guys just laid off 300 people. She made this comment to me, and I'll never forget it. She said, Rod, we laid off people who know how to answer a ringing phone. You guys know how to make a phone ring. You want to be indispensable, make that phone ring.
Yeah, I think it's critical, right? That as an employee, you want to feel that you have a stake in this too, and you're not just there to be told what to do. And I think that's an important lesson from this discussion that I'm taking away from you, is that we often ask, what can an employer do for an employee? What can an employer do for an employee? How can I be a better manager? How can I engage those people? And it's all valid questions. But at some point, you got to also ask, what are you doing to make the change? Because if you're not making the change is going to happen to you. Mm-hmm. Either you're a change maker or you're a change taker, essentially, right? So, well, thanks a lot, Rod. This has been an absolute pleasure. Just before that we end, I'd like to obviously, have you talk about how people can reach you and what specifically that you do to help leaders and other businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a bunch of email addresses. I'll use my activate180.com email. So rmcdermott@activate180.com is an easy way. You can look at our website, activate180.com, or mbexec.com for McDermott Bull. And I'm very accessible. So, if anybody has any questions or comments or whatever, please reach out to me. I'm happy to talk with folks.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Rod. It's been a pleasure.
Shri, I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Shri Chellappa here. Thank you so much for listening to the People Strategy Leaders podcast. If you are a successful leader or a people strategist who would like to be on this program, please visit engagedly.com/People Strategy Leaders podcast. If you got something out of this interview, would you share this episode on social media? If you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show and include the hashtag People Strategy Leaders. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episodes, go ahead and subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more? Follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter @Sri Chellappa. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time. And thank you to Patrick Ramsey, sound engineer at Kalinga Production Studios, for recording and mixing this show.